Welcome to Family Matters with Reese Law. We are a family law firm based in Fairfax with an office in Prince William County and serve the Northern Virginia area. In episode 16 of our podcast, we will be talking with Mary Smith, certified master life coach and certified positive discipline expert specializing in children, parenting, and the parent-child bond. Today, we're going to be discussing how to best help your child through the transition of the family structure. I called Mary because obviously she has parenting expertise, but more importantly, I know she has a real passion for children, mental health, and resiliency. Hi, Mary. Thank you for being our guest today on Family Matters with Reese Law. We're looking forward to discussing big changes for children and how parents can help them be successful. Can you explain a little bit about what it is that you do?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me, Kate. Well, I became a sort of a life coach and a parent coach because I have 4 children of my own, and there have been a lot that have gone on in my own family. So I learned an incredible amount about parenting and the impact that we have on our children. I wasn't divorced, but I did have a child that went from sort of, perfect to really, really angry and difficult. And she had medical issues, so it's, a different kind of trauma than divorce. And sending her to therapy was one piece of it. But what changed it was me was a couple of things. Having someone sort of alongside me and supporting me and explaining to me what was going on, sort of learning really what's happening in kids' brains. So what I do today when I help families is I do give them that support and that expertise, because I think it's really scary when our kids go through big things, when we have, a divorce, when life changes for them, when they start acting out. That can be really scary for parents. So I give the perspective to sort of figure out what's really going on. And, books and theories work, but they don't take into consideration the family's individual needs, right? You have a hard situation. You have to think about your personalities, the temperaments, what's actually happening in the separation. And that was ultimately what worked for me. My sweet spot is really 4 to 14. I feel like you can have a really profound impact on children's behavior and their mental health and who they'll turn into and during those stages.
All right. And you feel that your primary area of support is for the parents of these children? Is that
And
right?
that's
Or would you
that's a
say that
great
it's kind of across
question
the board?
because a lot of people don't quite get that. We really want someone else to take our child and sort of fix whatever issues are going on. But that parent-child bond and the connection between the parent-child is what not only is critical for their mental health, but drives better behavior, which nobody can ever really believe until they see it. So I believe that the parent, and that's what I learned, that's what finally shifted for me, is that we are change agents for our children. What we do will get them to change as opposed to telling them to do it differently.
As a parenting coach, what's the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about children going from living in one household to 2 households?
I think the first thing that I would say is that in a situation like that, it would be very normal for the parents to be tempted to assure the children that everything's fine, right? And immediately focus on something to get them off of that sort of traumatic, scary situation. And, like, what does that look like? Let's go get an ice cream. This is going to be fine. Let's buy something new for your new room so that, you like it better. But in the days that follow, you'd be trying to not upset the child. And the problem with that approach is it leaves the child confused about what's really happening, right? And why? Because in the case of divorce, the parents still love them, right? There may be something going on between the parents, but it has nothing to do with the child. Or does she start to think, is this my fault? And those are big, really scary emotions for the child, and we want them to get them out. And so wiping them under the carpet is not what I would want to do. So I've explained to you what I wouldn't want to do. I don't know, we can get into what we do want to do later, I guess.
Well, I think we can hit both. So, what should parents explain to a child when they're not saying everything's going to be okay? Because you're right, parents regularly, they say it's between your mom and I, it has nothing to do with you. That does not change the child's thought that they are an impetus or a reason. It's not satisfying enough to the child, I think, to hear that. So what should they be told, and you might want to base this on age, I would
Yeah.
imagine.
The interest, so here we already are addressing, because we gave them what you don't do, this is what you do. It is a little bit age dependent, but the reality is the foundation of it, the actually what you're trying to do is the same. It may look different because we talk to a 4-year-old differently than we talk to a teen, but what we're trying to get across is very similar. In general, there are two things that I would want for the child, and that is consistency, like consistent care, and nurturing. And nurturing is a funny word, but nurturing means what we're doing with the child to help them process their emotions and to feel safe and secure. And those two things are what give children a sense of stability and reassurance, which is what they need to thrive in this situation.
And there's hundreds of years of science behind the importance of stability for children and how that actually day-to-day stability or week-to-week stability can create feelings of security that the child will not have if they're living in chaos.
Exactly.
Am I right?
Correct. And I just want to add quickly, when you say chaos, the actual chaos, just so that the listeners know, when you say chaos, that doesn't necessarily mean messy room and, his favorite video game is in one house, but his soccer uniform's in another. Chaos is an emotional chaos. And we can, as parents, we can give them the space to handle that chaos. So I just think that's an important distinction, because not everything has to be perfect in your movements. So anyway, so go ahead.
No, far from perfect, but consistent about the message of love and acceptance that they should be hearing in both households. The child that only hears it in one household or feels it in one household, more importantly, might start to feel more wedded to being in that one household, and the other parent's going to go, but why? So it does have to be explained to them by somebody like you as to how these things work. So with consistent care, staying anchored and having routines and being orderly about what the children have in their lives. And then as far as the nurturing, it's basically the processing of the emotions, as I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and for your little ones, they can't quite grasp cause and effect. And even reality versus fantasy is difficult, so we want to stick to the basics. When we talk about, the nurturing, it's where she'll live, who's moving out, who's going to feed the cat, right? I mean, that's the question that one 4-year-old asked once when we were in the middle of something with a group, with two parents, and we were working on this. They explained everything and what was going on, and they still loved her. And the child's question was, but who's going to feed Tabby? So that's really what they need. Be prepared for questions and answers. And then I think your school age and older kids will be a little bit more open to sort of maybe opening that door to discussion. Some will want to talk, some won't. And I think you have to, you sort of play with what your child wants. And my one real trick here is we will never know what they're thinking unless we're listening. So basically listen more, get curious, talk less. And something that I used to do with my children when I don't have this exact issue, but with issues, was I would try to use an indirect question. And I'll say things like, how did your friend feel about not making the team this week, right? And then they can talk through a situation that's not directly them, but you'll actually learn what they're thinking. It's a little bit less threatening.
Good to know. So what should a parent not do if they are trying to create a strong, stable relationship with their children after there is not a marital union?
So I guess it's not going to come as a surprise, but there's 3 things known to help children after situations like this or after big changes, which, they're little T traumas is what we call them, like after a big change to a child. A strong relationship with each parent when possible. So you want to know that even though you're really angry at the other parties involved and what's ever going on, your child will do better if he or she has a strong relationship with both that other party and you. And then number 2, very simple, good old fashioned parenting, showing up, meeting their needs, keeping the adult issues separate. You're not hiding it from them, but you're keeping it separate. And then really a third one that in this type of thing is critical is a minimal exposure to the conflict. The no is airing the conflict and having those arguments in front of them.
I find another way that parents involve the children and don't even think that they are is, oh, here, give your mother her support check. That is completely involving the children as far as I'm concerned. Besides making them a courier, it's putting them in the position between the two parents. Oh, it's just a check, or it's just a letter to your mother that I put in your backpack. Hopefully, it's in an envelope, but it may not be, and it may not be nice. So I imagine that you do a fair amount of work with parents on understanding what it means to keep the children out of the conflict.
Yes, and a lot of that starts, and this is why a lot of parents have a hard time with the parent coaching side of it. A lot of starts with a good hard look at ourselves. We are all just trying to take care of ourselves and get through this and do the best for our children. Nobody is trying to make this difficult. There's grief going on, there's, whatever, court dates and lawyers, and it's hard to remember. So some very simple ways that some rules kind of I put in place are things like, and it's worth noting them down and sticking them, writing them on your phone so you can look at them, but limit conversations when you're exchanging children. Just don't have them. We all have phones and texts. Stick to the basics. Pick up, drop off times. Hello, goodbye, and be respectful. Children are watching. That is where they're learning whether they needed to be respectful in their relationships later on in life. They're not looking to take sides. Don't use kids to send the messages back and forth or the checks back and forth. I think you already mentioned that one, Kate. Put important details in writing. A little book, emails and texts. I'm huge on the texting, keeping one text available all the time for kid matters. Get a counselor or, a go-between person if it's too difficult to be civil. And then really respect those meeting times. I'm someone who's always a little bit frenetic and I'll arrive 5 minutes late. That's not respectful to the other person or the child in these really big moments, which is stressful for a child saying goodbye to one parent and hello to the other. So, make lists to make sure you have everything that you need. Anything to calm that child's nervous system during a very difficult transition. And then avoid goading. Like we always want the other guy to look bad, right? Just try to turn that off. And the reason I say that's hard is it's really more of a look at yourself than it is that you can't change anything the other person's doing, and you can't change what your child's doing. The only thing you have control over in that moment is you. So, a perfect example of this is sort of a parent using something fun to maybe pull the child to her side, or the parent introduces change to the child without talking to the other party, to the other parent, often a fun activity or trip, and then we think we're winning because the child's going to really like the trip. But the truth is that child is conflicted. And the parent who wants to or needs to keep on schedule, is temporarily the bad guy to the child. But kids don't miss that. They don't miss a trick. We walk around with neon signs on our forehead telling kids what we're thinking. They know exactly what's going on. And in the end, it might be your relationship with your child that will suffer. Both of them will, but yours might too. So there's no shortcuts to building that rock solid trusting bond with your child. And if you're looking for a shortcut to that, it's probably going to create conflict.
How would you address parents in these types of situations, including the high conflict? They say they want to resolve it. They say they want to work together, not necessarily work with each other, but they want to work towards a resolution to make things better for the children. Do you take them back to the beginning, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Kate. I'd go back to the beginning. When making any kind of decision, remember what I just said, which is you can't change them, much as we want to. We can't change. In fact, we've determined we can't change the other party. We're getting out of it. And you can't really, in the moment, make your child, you can make your child, young children do some things, but you can't really change what they're thinking and doing. So the focus is on us. Take 3 deep breaths, deep through the nose, out to the mouth, count to 5, count to 10, and calm your nervous system. This is it is a high stress situation for everyone, and ask yourself, what am I doing to maintain and support the normalness in my child's life? And is what I'm doing going to help deepen the bond of my child with me? Because you can be selfish, but even better, both parents. And I'm going to repeat that any kind of conflict puts the child into a stress state. And if the child is in a stress state, their mind and their brain is not in a position to bond with you. That's just neuroscience. So no, I'm not suggesting it's going to be easy. You're going to take a deep breath and all is going to be like, peaches and roses. But we have to put our big girl and big boy pants on and decide not to use our children to get back at the person we're mad at.
Anything else that you would add as to how to help parents help their child?
So I guess I'd love to touch on behavior, because behavior is, it's a symptom, it's a fever. It's not really the problem. Behavior is telling us something else is going on. So most often when a parent comes to me, it's because the child isn't listening, or the child's getting in trouble at school, or being difficult to her siblings, or screaming and yelling when she has to, be transitioned. And sometimes, the person who comes to me blames it on what the spouse is doing. So the two things that I work on are what I've said already. You can only change what you can change. And that behavior is a cue that the kids need something. So this kind of change is, for kids of all ages is going to be difficult. The littlest ones don't even know what their emotions are. The middle ones can't articulate it. And the older ones, some are going to be open to discussing it and some not. But when we know that it's a fever, we can say, okay, the child's yelling. Let's think through what's actually going on. Does that make sense? And a parent, sometimes parents come to me, even if the other parent doesn't want to come, the parent will still come to me on their own, because all we can change is us. So in one case, I'll give you an example of a mom of a 9-year-old who has become really belligerent and rude, refusing to do her homework. She was angry, right? And the mom came and said, my child, what's happened? She's never gonna get into college. She's being awful. How did this happen? How have I raised a child like this? And I've said to the mom what I've already said to you, is that we are the change agents. So we worked on shifting the mom's approach to one of real understanding and empathy and curiosity of what was going on. And empathy looks like, yeah, I know, this is a tough situation. I understand you being really mad. It doesn't look like you've got 2 houses. Like, what is your complaint? We made you a new bedroom in the other house. I get it, it's no fun. And then we problem solved with her daughter to figure out how she could support her to get her homework done in this new world with 2 houses. And together they came up with a couple solutions that were really obvious, but a child of 9 can't think that through. So now the child feels empowered. It gives her what we call agency. It makes her feel important. It makes her feel listened to and heard. And it gives her a little bit of control over the world. And that's the chaos we talk about. The chaos isn't getting the homework done. The chaos is, my dad's here, my mom's here, I have 2 houses, this is new. And the mom says, I got you. It's okay to be upset. And so once she feels in control and supported and heard, and she knows that she's got this mother that's sort of holding everything in place around her, not as a best friend, but as a parent, a supportive parent, it helps her manage her new reality of 2 homes. So we identify ways in this particular situation, and everyone's can be slightly different. In this situation, the child wasn't feeling seen and heard and was feeling like the situation was out of control. So we identified ways to hear her and understand her and get curious. That's the empathy piece. And then the problem solving and coming up with solutions together gives her a way to feel in control. And so what we had to work on really was giving the mom the habit of listening and not trying to fix and not telling her that everything was okay and accepting the girl's frustrations, and then still keeping the limits, and putting things into place, but now they both feel good. So this might sound a little woo. It might sound a little bit like, oh, sure, I got to put on my Tivas and start meditating. And that's not really the case. This is based on brain science, like childhood attachment literature, research, and neuroscience. So, as I mentioned, it's not just the empathy, but the empathy puts our relationship and the child's brain in a calmer place so that we can implement limits and boundaries and really high expectations. But we're doing it while we're meeting the emotional needs, the hardwired emotional needs to be seen and heard, and have some control in their lives. And that's what children need.
And I'd like to hear more about that. And what you just had to say was very valuable in that I often see parents where one of them turns into the best friend. They stop being a parent and they start being, currying favor or just simply feeling like they need to have a different relationship with the child, like the best friend relationship. That's not for the betterment of the child. That's the parents serving themselves. So tell us more about this.
Yeah, so that's interesting. You've really hit on two different things here. The first one, and I've said it a few times, and I think, because it is so critical, in terms of what we're talking about today, the primary focus should be on building that bond. And we call that bond, we call empathy the bonding glue, basically, of that bond with your child. That has zero to do with what the other parent is doing or not doing. It's not something you can change. But the research all shows that strong connection you have, not letting them get away with something, but that strong connection that is based on, I just said it, right? The empathy is the bonding glue. Hearing them and understanding that this is difficult and we can't just fix it. And it's okay that it's hurtful and they're sad. It shows that we breed kids that want to be cooperative, want to listen to what you have to say, and they're basically calmer. But when, as Kate pointed out, when you want to be their best friend, what actually happens in that moment is there's no limits and there's no, that container I talk about, that container goes away, and that is actually very scary for a child. And I'll give you a great example of that. Imagine you're all on a plane and you're all going on vacation and the plane suddenly does that thing where it drops and everybody grabs the plane, looks around and thinks, what's going on? And you're all really petrified. That's a little bit what the separation feels like to the kids. And now the pilot comes out of the cockpit and he says, guys, not really sure what's going on here. Does anybody have any ideas what we should do? Like, if you really want to go get something to drink, that would be fine. We got candy up here. Everybody can I don't know, do you think I should go straight through it? Or maybe we should try to go under the storm? I don't know. Anybody got any ideas? And that's what being a best friend can feel like to a child. So focus on building the bond with limits and expectations that are normal and taking the other parent out of the picture. Does that make sense?
It does, and I like the story. That's a good one that people should be able to relate to. Because we expect that pilot to be in charge. We expect them to know what they're doing and not be relying on us to tell them how to do their jobs. So I think people would get that in a big way. If it feels like the child is out of control or too much for the parent, I think in prior conversations, you and I have discussed children 13 to 14 years of age. Can you elaborate on that?
So really with anyone who comes to me, but clearly in a situation like this, we really look at the family dynamic first. We really open up the hood, look under what is really going on. How much anger is there in the parents, right? I can't tell you enough that the parent in these situations, 98% of the time, unless the child really has some disorder, and even in those cases, we need this bond, but there can be something else going on. 98 or 99% of the cases, the parent is the change agent. When we're trying to fix the child or change something that's not working for us, it's usually going to backfire. So when I work with people, I usually know right away if it's the child that needs the therapy. So I've said it a few times, recognize those needs, get curious, right? Get really curious about what they are going through, and you can just accept that. You don't have to agree with it. You can accept it, and anyone can reach out to me, and I have some things written on that I can send to them, no problem. And then consider what you really want. And what is it that you want? I'm presuming you want a secure, confident, happy child. And that should probably take a higher priority in your life than being a parent who wants to become your child's best friend or advocate against another parent. It's your relationship with your child, right? The other parent can make their own path.
All right. Well, thank you, Mary, for your time today. I appreciate it. You can contact Mary Smith at her office, 703-727-3909, or Mary at marysmithparentingcoach.com, with a website robust with information at marysmithparentcoach.com for more information. And Reese Law is 703-279-5140, and we're right here in Fairfax. And you can subscribe to our podcast channel so you won't miss an episode. And you can also visit our website, which is www.reeselawoffice.com. I don't even know if the www is still relevant these days, but I will share that with you. And just a bit of a disclaimer, this is not being done for personal advice to people that are listening. You should contact a professional before making any decisions of a legal nature or nature having to do with your children and how to best help them. There is no rule that your child has to be in therapy forever. They may just need a few sessions to air out their concerns. It might be the parents, as Mary has stated, that need more help than the children do, so that they can be better parents. Thank you for joining us.
Produced by Heartcast Media.